So for those of you with the Mohican Wildlife Weekend, I hope you enjoyed tonight's program and also get a chance to be able to enjoy a lot of the programs that will be going on Sunday. For those of you who may not know about it, the Mohican Wildlife Weekend is a joint effort between 6 organizations, including Mohican State Park Resort, where we have programs throughout the Ashland County, Richland County, all basically conservation, nature-oriented, and so almost all of them have no fee charge at all. Some of them may have a nominal fee, like the birding boat tours and those types of things. So if you don't have it up top at the desk, I'm sure they've got some of the information on the schedules of all the cool stuff that's happening tomorrow. The Bird Sanctuary, which is one of the organizations, is a nonprofit organization, which just means that we survive on donations. And so if you come to the sanctuary, it is a free admission facility, but we do appreciate any support you can share when you're there. The birds you're going to be meeting tonight, we have Monty the barn owl, and Ditch the American kestrel, and Ichabod the turkey vulture. So you're going to get quite a little variety. Besides Monty the barn owl, these are all birds that have come through our rehabilitation program. The bird sanctuary, Monty doesn't like to wait. They've all come through our rehabilitation program, and for some reason or another cannot go back out to the wild. If you come visit the bird sanctuary, and I did bring some of the programs here, tomorrow, because of Mohican Wildlife Weekend, we'll be doing a bird show at 1 o'clock. On the hour, we do keeper talks, which means all the birds will be out, be able to see them up close and photograph them. And there's kids activities tomorrow. I see lots of kids in the room. So we have an obstacle course with prizes, and you get to crawl through tunnels and dig through live worms. So, you know, it'll be a good day at the bird sanctuary if you want to join us. There's a map on the back. It's really about 40 minutes here from the lodge. And one of the highlights of the bird sanctuary, if you haven't been there, is not only the 90 acres of trails, but we have a songbird aviary. And if you like songbirds, you can walk in there and the cedar waxwings will come and eat right out of your hand. So that's always kind of a joy. So I do invite you to come to the Ohio Bird Sanctuary. I'm a little tongue-tied. I've been talking since about 7 o'clock this morning. I apologize if I digress. If I say something that doesn't make any sense at all, please ask me to repeat it again, because it probably made sense in my mind, but it may not have made sense by the time it left my lips. We're going to be walking around. You'll get a chance to see the birds up close. They all have anklets on with straps, which we'll be holding on to, which means the birds can't fly throughout the room. But that doesn't mean they can't maybe try to jump off the glove and come right back up. You're not allowed to touch the birds, but I do see lots of cameras. Photography is very welcome. The flash will not bother the birds. And as we walk around, you're more than welcome to say, my son, my daughter, or myself as a grandparent or a parent would like to have a picture taken with the bird. And that'll be able to be done with Monty and Ditch. Don't really recommend it with Ichabod. So, Ichabod, most of our birds right now, which you'll hear all these vocalizations throughout the program, all 3 of these birds are very socialized. 2 of them are imprints, which means they think they're the human species instead of their own. And so when they look at us as staff members, we're looking really good right now. And especially Ichabod gets very bonded to me during the breeding season, which means everybody in this room, you're all competitors. So he's kind of like a guy puffing up at the bar to protect his girlfriend. So with Ichabod, I'm not as comfortable doing photos with him because he might actually see you guys as competition. But we'll get a chance to see him up close. We're gonna start with Ditch. We're going to start with Ditch, which is our American kestrel. And as I said, when I walk around, you can look at them up close, but I do ask that if you've got small children that you just refrain from having them try to reach out and touch him. It just would really startle him. I mean, he's a small guy, and so we all kind of look like big monsters to him sometimes. So he's a little guy. Doesn't mean he's not amazing. This little guy goes 75 miles per hour. The American kestrel is in the falcon family. They're just like the peregrine falcon. They're one of the fastest designed birds. The peregrine falcon, which would be their cousin, which would be about the size of a crow, can go 280 miles per hour. And falcons are aerodynamic. They're designed for speed. These guys obviously can't go as fast as their cousins, but at 75 miles per hour, still pretty impressive considering the size of this bird. He is a predator, so he's going to eat things as small as crickets, cicadas, on up to mice, small snakes, and other birds. This guy could eat, he could take like a sparrow. Actually, if he's having a really bold day, even something as large as a mourning dove. Unfortunately, one of their favorite birds to eat is probably everybody in this room's also favorite, and that is the hummingbird. So that is a bird that these guys will prey upon. But they catch them with their feet. They are a bird of prey. They have the hooked beak. But the American kestrel is one of the few birds of prey that you can tell the males from the females just by looking at them. In most birds of prey, the only way to tell them apart is the female is larger. But in kestrels, there is a difference in coloration. The males often have a solid chest with maybe some black teardrops on it, and their wings are blue, and their tail is kind of this pretty red color, almost the color you might see on a red-tailed hawk. The American kestrel female is, as a lot of other bird species, very camouflaged. She's all shades of stripes of brown. The only blue on her body is actually that halo on the top of her head. But they both share what we call the lanner stripes or the mustache mark, the black lines underneath the eyes. And unlike the hawks that have an eyebrow that hangs out over their eye, all falcons have these black marks underneath their eyes that absorb the glare of the sun. So just like a football player or a baseball player or even cheetahs, that absorbs the glare of the sun when they're hunting. On the back of his head, might be a little hard to see from a distance, but when I walk around you might be able to see it better. He has 2 dots on the back of his head, and those are the full predators that he's looking the other way. It kind of makes him look like an owl looking at you instead of a falcon looking at me. So those false eyes, or those black dots, are from a distance. A predator would think he's facing this way, so if they were going to try to grab him, they so-called sneak up on him and come around to the back. Well, at 75 miles per hour, he's going to be able to get away from anything that's trying to attack him. So that's kind of a type of camouflage for him, even though he's not camouflaged the way the female is. Now, one of the favorite things that the American kestrel can do, especially this guy, is illustrate how many bones he has in his neck. Does anybody know how many bones a bird has in their neck? Anybody know how many a mammal has? How many do we have? 7. Very good. Okay, birds have twice as much. There's our math question for the day. So birds have 14. So any motion we can do with our head, a bird can do twice as far. If we can look at the ceiling, they can flick their head backwards. If we can look to the side, they can look to the back. And if we can turn our head on our shoulder, they can turn their head upside down. In fact, I've had him turn his head around backwards and then flip it backwards. So he had to show off one day for us to show how much he can move his head. But with those extra vertebrae, that allows him to look in all different directions, because notice that he doesn't move his eyes, and you'll see this more when I walk around. They have no muscles around their eyes the way we do. Our muscles connected to the white part of our eyes. So the only way for him to look around is he has to be able to move his head. The other thing about birds is that their vertebrae are fused for flight. So where I can turn my back and my neck and my eyes and look behind me, a bird, he can't move his eyes or his back, so the only way to be able to look behind him is to be able to turn that head all the way around. But with him going 75 miles per hour and those eyes being connected to his skull, if when he's flying and his wings are going like this, if his head's going like this, that means his eye's going like this, and it's going to blur his vision. So what they can do with those extra bones in their neck is like a shock absorber. He can hold his head completely still no matter what his body's doing. So I'm going to move my hand, and notice how this can keep his head still while I do that. It makes it look like he's dancing. Let's see if we'll do it. No, he's going to go to the bathroom. Hold on a second. Multitasking can sometimes be tough. There we go. Ew, that was a big one, wasn't it? All right, we'll go back to dancing now. See if we can get him to go all the way around. So all of that just because those extra bones. Almost if you think of his neck like a slinky. Now these guys are also cavity nesters. So that means instead, there we go, that's a good one. Right. So instead of making a nest, these birds would nest in old woodpecker holes, bird houses, even abandoned buildings. sometimes in warehouses. So just like the peregrine falcon that nests on cliff ledges, these guys are going to be, somewhere where they can kind of nest somewhere flat, but they prefer cavities, which the peregrines usually aren't going for cavities. So you may find that you have, we've had people where, you know how they used to do the insulation where they drill a hole in the side of the house and blow it in on the old farmhouses? Sometimes when those plugs would come out, then they ended up being perfect for kestrels because all the nice soft insulation in there, and people would often have these falcons living in the side of their house. But not all bad. They eat mice, they eat insects. They're kind of a great neighbor to have around. I'm going to walk around and give you a chance to see ditch up close. If you guys have any questions, this is kind of a great time to ask as I'm walking around. But as I said, you can get photos or get your picture taken with them. Any other questions? Yes. They have an alarm call that kind of sounds like killy, 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 killy. It's real high pitched. They have a solicitation when they're trying to get a girl's attention that's, well, it's hard to imitate, isn't it? We hear it a lot lately. It's kind of like, I can't even do it. I'm going to butcher it trying to do it. When out in the wild, you'd be most likely to hear that high pitch that sounds like they're saying killy, killy, killy. But he does have a much softer, more romantic voice when he's trying to get someone's attention. Did you have a question? Charlie. You might actually make the other sound from the box. He sometimes will, because being cavity nesters, when he goes in the box, he tries to see if he can encourage a girlfriend to go in with him. So sometimes when he sees us, he'll kind of solicit from the box. So if he makes the sound, I'll draw your attention to it. He was making it earlier. So this is Monty. Monty's a bar now. He's usually a showstopper. He is not one that was injured. He came from a breeding program. He's a European barnow. He looks just like the barnows we have here in North America. He's just smaller. The European barnow would be about 3 to 4 inches taller than the North American would be taller than the European. Now you can see right away their body's very different. That falcon was designed for speed. Owls, they're designed for stealth, so they can sneak up on their prey. So their feathers, and that's the sound the barn owl makes. Yeah. Barn owls do not hoot, as you can see by that. Sometimes they're nicknamed the screech owl, but they are not what we know as the screech owl. The screech owl is a small, either gray or red owl that's about this big with ear tufts. Almost looks like a very small gray horned owl. But the barn owl, as I said, often nicknamed the screech owl, makes that call that he just gave was a solicitation call. If he was upset, they do a high-pitched scream, which is designed, they were originally cave dwellers. If you look at his coloring, he doesn't look like the bark on a tree like most owls look like. So he's camouflaged to look like a cave, and his voice is designed to basically resound or bounce off the walls of a cave to get rid of an intruder. So if a predator would come into a cave and corner a barn owl, they have a very high-pitched scream that often people say when they hear it coming from a barn almost sounds like a woman in distress or somebody being harmed. So our whole stories of ghost owls have come from these owls. Because if you look at the underside of Monty when he flies, he's white. And by owls having stealth and being able to fly and make no sound at all, if you saw the barn owl flying across the field, they would look like a white image, not making any noise, flying across. And then if they would go, they often would nest in abandoned buildings, so this white thing floats across, goes into an abandoned building, and when they see another owl, they actually giggle. They sound like little girls at a slumber party. They go hee 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 hee. You know, so you're thinking, oh well, sounds like a nice ghost. I think I'll go check that out. And as you go in, then the alarm call, the ah! At that point, usually people are running out of the building. And therefore, because they're nocturnal, they only come out at night, and a lot of those types of characteristics, a lot of what we think of ghosts and images of ghosts have come from owls. Now, a misconception with owls is that they're wise and that they're smart. When you look at an owl, they have a very upright posture, a little more human-like. Their heads look huge, so if you have a big head, should be a big brain under there. And then the way they kind of move their head, kind of methodically, they have a look of being wise. Or to let you know that owls' brains are about the size of their eyes. So when you look at a barn owl, you realize, not big eyes, not a very large brain either. But that entire head, we'll see if he'll stand up, is feathers. Look how far my finger sinks in before I ever touch them. So underneath all these feathers is a very small head. And inside that very small head is a very small brain. Doesn't mean that the barn owl is an incredible predator. They're just not a problem solver. Their brain has, basically controls their eyes and their ears and all of their instincts for hunting. In fact, the barn owl's brain is so sensitive for sound that when he's hunting, he can tell exactly what he's going to catch even before he catches it. When you look at his face, can you see what looks like a heart? Okay, those are his ears. Right here, this is his left ear, and this is his right ear opening. Sorry, Monty. And then these circles right here, this is his left ear, and this is his right ear. So his face is like a giant satellite dish. So when he's out hunting, he's capturing sound, funneling it into his ears, and it's sensitive enough that he can tell by the heart rate and the respiration what the animal is. Is it a sparrow? Is it a robin? Is it a rat? Is it a mouse? And so he knows whether it's the right size for him to catch and whether it's worth his effort. So he's got very small feet, so he's going to have to go for things like mice and shrews and small moles. That's going to be the only thing he's able to hunt. You also notice, has he done his little thing like this?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, that's called undulation. When he does it, watch that he actually gets 3 different areas. And by actually picking up sound here, here, and here, it triangulates, and that allows him to hone in exactly where sound's coming from. So that's all part of him trying to figure out where sound is coming from. Yeah. Thank you for demonstrating. So he's hearing sounds, and that's why sometimes we go to buildings and he really focuses in a corner off and tell the principal or whatever, I'm like, you may want to check that corner for rodents, because he was really kind of focusing in over there. So he could pick up the smallest of sounds. So the soft feathers allow them to fly silently, but interestingly enough, they're no longer waterproof. Most birds, because of the way their feathers are made, are waterproof. Owls, if they get wet, get wet. And so that's another reason why owls will often, you'll find them hiding in areas, staying out of the weather, because they're not waterproof like other birds. They live in barns, because barns kind of look like caves, and they're looking for rodents, which you're going to find near humans. So that's why we find barn owls living in barns, even though naturally, if they had a choice, they would be they'd inhabit in caves, because that's what they're primarily designed for. We are down to maybe 40 nesting pairs of barn owls in the state of Ohio. And it's primarily because of 2 things. Well, they came to Ohio because they followed the settlers. Ohio didn't have fields until we came. So as we cleared the woods, the barn owl followed us. Well, now we've changed. We don't have as many farms. When you go to Ohio, you'll notice there's not a lot of hay fields, not as much cattle and sheep farming. The farms we do have are primarily crop. They're soybean and corn, and this does not provide the food source of animals that these guys are going to be able to hunt. But the biggest cause of the loss of barn owls, along with the habitat loss, is because they live close to humans, and humans don't like rodents. We use poison. And because they're most likely that their food source they're picking up has a good chance of having a rodenticide in it, we're poisoning this population. There are a lot of countries that understand the value of the barn owl, and they spend a lot of time, Malaysia is one of them, putting up barn owl boxes. They totally control their entire rodent population through basically boosting the barn owl population. We could do the same. I know it's always kind of a tough switch, but what's happened is by poisons we have actually killed most of we've taken down the population of the animals that naturally control the rodents, and so now it's kind of this endless battle until we get those animals back. But the things that are going to eat rodents are another thing we don't get really excited about, which are snakes. So you've got some of the rodent eaters are not the ones that we all think are cute and fuzzy and want to have around. But if you have a barn, if you're in an area and you're thinking, I really don't want the mice in my house, which I totally understand, but I don't want to hurt nature, there is an alternative. If you take instant mashed potatoes and you put them out, dry flakes, the mice will eat the instant mashed potatoes, and when they drink water, the instant mashed potatoes will expand, and it will kill the mouse. But if another animal eats that mouse, they get mashed potatoes with their meat. And it doesn't matter. So this is kind of an alternative on getting rid of rodents and not killing other animals. So it's just kind of something to think about when you're trying to get rid of something. Just think, wow, if I poison this, what might eat that? Because there's always going to chance it's going to go back into the food chain. All right, I'm going to let Stephanie walk around with Monty. You guys can you can look at Monty also. Same thing. You can't touch him, but you can get your photos taken with him. Yeah. Thank you for demonstrating. So he's hearing sounds, and that's why sometimes we go to buildings and he really focuses in a corner off and tell the principal or whatever. I'm like, you may want to check that corner for rodents, because he was really kind of focusing in over there. So he could pick up the habitat loss is because they live close to humans, and humans don't like rodents. We use poison. And because they're most likely that their food source they're picking up has a good chance of having a rodenticide in it, we're poisoning this population. There are a lot of countries that understand the value of the barn owl, and they spend a lot of time, Malaysia is one of them, putting up barn owl boxes. They totally control their entire rodent population. Okay, we'll go ahead and put Monty away. And use your glove for putting back. All right, our last bird, and it's not really a bird of prey. They are a bird that eats meat, but these are called carrion eaters. So these are the birds that are eating the dead animals. So I brought my friend Ichabod the turkey vulture. Often Ichabod doesn't come out and do the Mohican programs because he doesn't like the whole fireplace situation up top. And we find with Ichabod, the best way to use him in programming is always to keep him happy. Because does anybody know what a vulture does when they get upset?
I know.
They puke, yeah. They regurgitate their food. So it's really not a sideshow you guys want to see. So we always find with Ichabod, we always respect what he likes and does not like to do. So each one has a bigger bird in it, doesn't it? Ah. There's the alarm call of an American kestrel. Yeah. So that's what they say sounds like killy, killy, killy. He can see Ichabod through the holes in his box. He's like, oh, he's going to eat me. And that's Monty wanting out of his box. So you have all the side shows. Isn't he handsome? Now, I heard someone today, I gave a keeper talk on turkey vultures today. And by the time I was done, the lady said that she was now envious of vultures. Now that has to be the most compliment we've ever had, but as I went through the talk, all they did, they said, wow, they're kind of cool. I learned about, I think I like them a little bit more. So usually my job is not by the time I'm done talking about vultures that you think they're beautiful. I mean, I'm not going to change that. But I do hope by the time you learn a little bit about vultures, you think they're maybe a little bit cooler than maybe when you were getting started. Because you look at them and you're like, not overly attractive. They eat dead animals. You know, vultures are not my favorite. But you know what? Vultures are amazingly made. First of all, can you guys see something funny about his nose?
Yeah.
Yeah, what's funny about his nose?
It looks like not like an actual nose, it's like dented in. And it looks almost like a claw.
Yeah, it does look like a claw. Very good. What about his nostrils? What about his nostrils?
It looks like the fossil.
Can you see through it?
No.
No, look through his nose here. Now can you see through it?
Yep.
Yeah, so if you look at his nostrils, you can see through his nostrils. Birds do not have a highly developed part of their brain for scent. It's usually just eyes and ears. The turkey vulture is an exception. They do have a developed olfactory part of their brain, so they use their nose for locating their prey. So for one, they have very large nostrils. Two, turkey vultures prefer what's on the inside of the animal than what's on the outside of the animal. So when you do that, you could get things stuck up in your nose. So they don't have the cartilage that separates their nose, and so if they would get any debris in their nose, fortunately, they have a very long middle toe that they use inappropriately to pick their nose. So they keep their nose clean. Now when you find a dead animal, it may not have died from being hit by a car or something like that. It could have a disease. So it could have a virus, it could have a bacteria, and most likely if it was a diseased animal, it's going to have bugs. It's going to have parasites on it. So when a vulture gets to his food, it's not as easy as it sounds. The first thing he has to do is make sure whatever parasite is on that animal doesn't crawl onto him. And so if you look at, kind of, you guys might be able to see it up front. See how red his head is?
Yep.
Okay, you notice how his feet are not? They have, what's it look like on his feet? Like some white chalky looking stuff.
Yeah.
Can you see that?
Yeah.
Yeah, that white chalky stuff is the uric acid. So when a vulture goes to the bathroom, you know what he does? He tips his tail forward and puts his urine all over his feet. Now you're probably wondering, why is this going to make me like this bird more? I said it's going to make you appreciate them, maybe not think they're more beautiful. But the urine actually acts like a bug repellent and keeps the bugs from crawling up their legs. It also has another benefit. Because they're eating dead animals, there's not going to be a lot of fluid or water in their food, so most birds will pant when they get hot, so they're going to lose some water through this process. To conserve water, instead of panting, vultures will urinate on themselves, and when it evaporates, it cools off their body temperature. Very efficient. You know, it's like geothermal heating, you know, recycling things. It's working pretty well. So that's why they have white on their feet. Now, and also in his nose, when he eats, salt water comes out of his nose and repels the bugs off of his nose. So those are all the ways he protects himself from the bugs. That doesn't help us a whole lot. What helps us is if he finds an animal that has died of a disease and he eats it, the acids in his stomach are so strong he can digest the virus and the bacteria, so he doesn't get sick. And not only does he not get sick, no other animal is going to come along and eat that and get sick and spread the diseases to us, to our livestock, or anything like that. And also when they pass it back out of their body, the virus and the bacteria are dead. So whether it's anthrax or botulism, West Nile virus, any of those types of things, these guys break the chain of animals spreading disease from one to another. So they're really kind of our health insurance, you might say, out in the wild to keep us from getting sick. But one amazing thing about vultures, and I haven't quite figured out why the medical profession hasn't studied it, they don't get tumors. So there's something about their immune system. Not only do they not get diseases, they also don't get tumors. So you would think there would be somebody out there wanting to study vultures and figure out how that might help humans. They also are extremely intelligent. If you look at them, remember we said the owl's brain is about the size of his eyes? Well, you can tell because he has any feathers on his head. He's got a very large brain. It's about the size of a ping pong ball. So they're very intelligent birds. They're problem solvers. They are also slow to reproduce. Most birds can reproduce when they're 1 year old. And a turkey vulture does not reproduce until they're 11 years old. So so a lot of times we look at them and we think, wow, there's a lot of vultures, but when you realize only a small population of them are reproducing, because they don't reproduce until they're 11, there's not, you have to be really careful that we protect their population, because if we lose the vultures, we could have problems with spreads of disease. Now, there's two types of vultures out there. There's black vultures and there's turkey vultures. Sometimes they're hard to tell apart because turkey vultures have a black head their first year of life. Easiest way to identify them is when a black vulture opens his wing, he has a white patch right here. A turkey vulture, and we'll see if Ichabod will show you, they're light on the back side of both sides of their wings. So we'll see. Can we show them their wings? Or is it too late at night for showing wings? Ichabod. No? What do you think? One more try. Come on. Come on. Come on. Come on. We can do it. There you go.
Oh, that's a big.
Yeah. All right. So see how his wings are kind of two-toned? That's one of the easiest ways to identify these guys in flight. You can tell them from an eagle also because their primaries kind of split off like fingers. So when they're flying, their wingspan's the same as eagles. Eagles' heads are larger, and the vulture has those fingers that kind of flip off to the side. Also, their iridescent feathers. Their feathers heat up in the sun, and that helps also to repel bugs off of them because their feathers get so hot. If there's any parasites, they'll come to the surface. And they very meticulously take their beak and keep all the bugs out. So of all the birds that come to us at the bird sanctuary, these guys are always the cleanest, which, in our mind we would think would be the opposite. But these are the least likely ones to come with any type of parasites on them because they just spend a lot of time keeping themselves very, very clean. Ichabod is with us because somebody found him as an egg and thought it'd be fun to hatch him. This is illegal, but the whole story is kind of heartwarming in its own right. So this older gentleman and his nephew were hiking through the woods. They found a vulture nest, and he had a quail farm. And he thought, oh, this will be fun. Let's hatch this vulture egg. So they took the egg, they hatched it. None of the quail hatched that year, only the vulture egg. And the family's name actually was Mr. Smith. I'm not hiding his identity. And they hatched the egg, and Mr. Smith was raising his vulture. He called him Dead Dog Diner, was the name Ichabod had when he was growing up. And their plan was, when Ichabod grew up, that they were going to let, or Dead Dog Diner, when he grew up, they were going to let him go. Well, these birds, because they're highly intelligent, don't come into this world knowing who they are. They learn their identity by what raises them. We find the same thing with hawks and owls. We have to be really careful that the birds don't see us during being raised up. So this family raised Ichabod. We found out about him and got a hold of him and said, you're really not allowed to have that bird. He's protected by federal law. And they're like, that's okay, we're going to let him go. And I said, you can't let him go. He doesn't know he's a vulture. He's not going to survive, and he's just going to wreak havoc. So I said, you really probably should bring him into the bird sanctuary. So they said they would, and they said, Dad's really attached to this vulture. And I said, okay, well, as soon as you could bring him in, that'd be great. I don't think we saw Dead Dog Diner for about another month. And by the time they got here, he had a whole photo album of the vulture. They said he has more kids as vulture than he does as kids. So Ichabod came to us when he was between 3 to 4 months old. He's now 19 or 20. He's been with us a long time. What was interesting was throughout the years, the Smith family would come visit Ichabod, and he always knew Mr. Smith. I mean, he still, sometimes if somebody comes and resembles him, Ichabod will kind of look. And the daughter called me. Her father was in hospice care, and he said, we just want to let you know that Dad, is in hospice care. And I was out taking a walk, and Gail, we came across an injured owl. Somehow our paths keep crossing, so we went out, rescued the owl, and Mr. Smith passed away shortly after that. His last request was on his gravestone. He wanted a picture of Ichabod. So if you go through the town of Sullivan, it is worth going through the cemetery. Take the one avenue to the left in the cemetery. There's a big black stone, and there's a picture of Mr. Smith and Ichabod. So he's probably the only turkey vulture that has his own tombstone already. But anytime you kind of get a chance to know these birds up close, you do find they've got kind of a captivating personality. You can look at them up close. I'm not going to try to do the photo ops. It's just a little too tough with this big guy. Do you guys have any questions about the sanctuary or about vultures?
How long do they live?
In the wild, they live to be about 40 to 50 years old. They're very long lived. Come on, we can do it. There you go. Yeah.
Wow,
All right. So see how his wings are kind of two-tone? That's one of the easiest ways to identify these guys in flight. You can tell them from an eagle also because their primaries kind of split off like fingers. So when they're flying, their wingspan's the same as eagles. Eagles' heads are larger, and the vulture has those fingers that kind of flip off to the side. And in fact, his bones are hollow. He's got pneumatic bones. All birds have pneumatic bones, but his humeral bone is actually attached to his air sacs. So his bones are even lighter than like a hawk or an eagle. Because he makes me look really strong, but he only weighs 3 pounds. He's just very, very light. Any other questions? Yes?
What's the biggest animal he can eat?
An elephant, because you have to kill it. Yeah. So anything dead, a whale, if it's beached, he's not all that picky. He'll eat a shrew all the way up to a whale.
Like an ant, if it's dead.
If it's dead. Yeah. He likes mealworms. Yeah. He just doesn't like anything that moves.
And there's something that actually can have a claw too.
What?
A claw.
Yeah. You guys have any other questions? Yes.
How fast does he fly?
Does the turkey vulture go? He glides, so he's going to probably be even slower than an owl. He's going to go maybe 10 miles per hour, but he's not worried about getting anywhere fast because dead animals don't run very fast. So his whole thing is to be able to, how long can he stay airborne without exerting any effort? So they ride the thermals, they wait for the heat of the rise of the day, and then when he puts his wings out, do you guys all remember gym class when the gym teacher would make you do this and your shoulders would burn? Well, we're using our muscles through here, and we're using our pectoral to do it. Vultures have a ligament that runs along their wing, makes them more like an umbrella, so it's kind of like, and they hold up and they don't have to use their muscle mass as much to keep their wings out. So it takes very little effort for them to soar for hours before they ever find their food.
So since they glide and they're looking for something dead, are they picking that up by scent?
They are. When they're up there, they're typically picking up by scent, and that's why the turkey vulture is one of the few vultures that can find things in wooded areas because they're going for smell. The black vulture will follow the turkey vulture into a wooded area because they locate their food by sight. And when they're flying, if you see them up there just circling, people will say, I think they found something dead. Usually at that point they're not. If they're just up there circling, they're moving from one area to another. It's not till they pull their wings in what's called a dihedral and start rocking their way down out of the air drafts, and they'll get close to the ground. And then once on the ground, they spend a lot of time walking because scent blows until they find it. So it's kind of this whole narrowing down process. But they do first find it by a sense of smell, and you think it doesn't seem too hard because dead animals have an odor. The interesting thing is their nose is so sensitive they can smell an animal that's only been dead for a couple hours, which you and I wouldn't be able to do that. But whatever chemicals are given off when the animal dies, they're able to pick that up.
My mom was definitely that.
Yes.
It seems like they'd be more competitive. I'm surprised when you see one, you see so many. How does that?
Well, if you get a chance to watch them at a feeding site, they're pretty fascinating to watch. There is a pecking order at the site. Sometimes you'll get there, and actually in the middle of is a red-tailed hawk who's getting to eat first, and all the vultures are waiting on. It's like watching a lion feed, and the vultures.
Okay.
And then watch when they start to feed. If there's any juveniles, which are ones with dark heads, they'll be on the outside, and they're going to have to wait. The adults will feed first. And if one comes up and approaches, the more dominant birds are going to stand up real tall and stretch their neck out about 3 or 4 inches. Ichabod right now is doing a very submissive pose. His head's like this. And so, when I first was working with him and he was going through his adolescent years, he spent a lot of times trying to stand up straight, and I'd be like, nobody. So I always make sure when I hold him, I'm almost a head above him. So I'm automatically, through his language, telling him that I'm actually the dominant vulture for him. And you can watch at feeding sites. You can watch the more dominant ones eat first, and then when they're done, the other ones get to come in. So then at some point, you'll see the dominant ones are on the outskirts, and their wings are out, because they're all done eating. They're just sunning, and they're just digesting their food, and then the more submissive birds get a chance to eat. So there is a pecking order. It's just not... You're not going to see any aerial displays with these guys. They're not that acrobatic. They're going to do it all on ground through posturing.
How do the females figure in? Are the females smaller?
Females are larger.
Are they
They
larger?
get,
Okay,
yeah,
like the
they're definitely dominant when it comes to the feeding sites. Yeah, I like birds of prey because I'm small. I kind of like the idea that they're bigger than their mates, but I'll be 6 foot tall my next one. Any other questions? All right. Well, thank you for coming, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your weekend.